Hi, I'm Ayush Kasliwal. I'm an industrial design practitioner from Jaipur. Our practice is a multidisciplinary one with product designers, textile designers, et al. And we're a learning practice in the sense that every product, every project that we do has to be something that leaves us more educated or more knowledgeable than we have been earlier. So the idea of the Shikaar Bagh started off with my knowledge of Mr. Kanota as being a very well-known cook and writing in local newspapers. So we were talking about the definitive non-vegetarian Rajasthani experience. Now, because of being an old family, the idea of shikar, it's a very long history of how a shikar is done, how a hunting lodge is there and how platforms are there. So we built up on the idea of shikar and what a Shikaar Bagh might have looked like. Something out in the forest, a place where a person goes and stays for a few days. It started off with that thought. So Jaipur as a historic city has been limited to its old walls. In the olden times, the king had given out these larger baghs, as they were called, to the Thakur and Thakuranas around Jaipur. And my client, Mr. Mansingh Kanota, his place is close to Jaipur called Kanota. So this site was actually part of a bagh, a historic bagh called the Kanota Bagh, organized around how the very classical the Mughal charbaghs used to be. So it is a large square where the Haveli was in the center. This is the gate and this was the central axis. And within this there was another axis. My site is here. This was a pavilion that existed previously. There was a small fountain here. There's a forest here right now. And there were already some existing shops out here. And this was a sort of like a small annex to it because the owner's great-grandfather was the head of the police in Jaipur state. And this was where his kacheri was. So this is the central axis and this is where you, as you approach, you see a big the big Haveli. This part was actually very interesting because here there was a sub-axis. And when we did the site survey, we found that there was an axis out here earlier and there were remains of an old cobbled path. So we built on that because obviously this is part of a much bigger complex and we wanted to retain the essence of what originally might have been there. It's also very interesting because despite being in the center of Jaipur, when you are at this location, you just see green all around. You don't see any high-rise building. And that we thought was probably the most interesting and exciting thing about the project. So the project is located on this axis. And on the periphery used to be what were the stables at one time. So the stables are still there and the toilets and things like that were in the stables. But the decision to come to this particular location was both the approach, the fact that it's hidden with a lot of trees, and kind of comes as a surprise. Those trees are 50, 80-year-old mango trees and big trees that are around the complex. And the main road is about here. So it is offset far enough for the sound also to be really low. So that was why we came to this particular place. So what we have is, along this axis, when we have all the trees out here, we have a lower level and we have a tent on top, which is very much like what the shikar used to be done on platforms on the machan. In fact, we also have a small machan out here, which was there before the site. The site from here, when you see, if there are any tall buildings, there are trees out here that mask it. So when you see, you don't see anything on top. And the view from here goes all the way across and goes to the central park. So the idea of being on a platform and being able to see that far was really what drove us about the place and the sighting, and everything has been toned down to enhance the view from the top. Because the space has got a geometricity about it, we thought we would retain that aspect and keep like a nice proper grid around it. Now it's a steel building. It's got steel columns. The infill walls are in masonry, but most of it is steel, the pipes that go up. So the organization of the space was driven to an extent by the materials we chose, and we were very conscious about wanting to make it in iron because it's much faster. The The building is organized in the ground floor, the idea being that it should look like it was something that was always there. The infill walls are in random ruble, the doors are big wooden doors, the windows are tall windows with louvers, high ceiling. There's a basic rectangle that is there in the plan with a forecourt, a veranda, a side court, small little platforms on the side with staircases that go up, and this goes up in this way. Now you're very deliberate in wanting to make it look like it was done in over time, not built in one go. The look of the ground floor is more formal. It's got a bar-like installation. It's got sofas. It's kind of like the relaxed place. We also found 2 old gun cabinets with old guns with the landlord, and they kind of set the tone for the lower level. There's a big garden out here, which is great for events and things like that, and it also has a whole row of cypress trees on this side, and there's outdoor seating out here. So it's got a very formal feel to it. It's very woody. The entire ceiling is made in wood. The floor are rough quota, so it has a sort of robust feel to it. The wood in the ceiling was of particular advantage because we can service the ceiling very easily, and any space evolves with time, so we don't have to puncture holes inside the false ceiling and things like that. So that was a huge thing, and it also forms a very visual, gives a lot of visual warmth to the place. The color on the walls is a gold, so it forms it changes a lot because of the light that is there. The evenings it becomes dark and brooding, in the day it lifts up. The furniture is leather covered. There are carpets, the Persian carpets on the floor. There's an old painting of a horse, which is actually in this site, which forms the centerpiece behind the bar. The bar has got lots of Art Deco influences, so it kind of encapsulates a time span, because a lot of homes were not built in one time, they evolved. As time came, new things came. So it's a kind of a mixed feel that we have, but it has got a definite, almost sort of a English-y feel to it, which is very deliberate because that was a very aspirational thing for a whole period in time. The ground floor is of this spirit. The outdoor veranda is more urbane almost because the lawns are manicured. There's nice seating and charpas, the little buggies that people can sit inside and have their drink or whatever else they want. This leads onto a small open air barbecue out here, which along with there are stairs that go up. Now functionally speaking, it's good for a restaurant to have spaces that can be separated without looking that they are separated. So this is a separate entrance which allows the upstairs area to be a big party place, very open with the tent, and because the winds are quite nice, it is very airy and open. Going up, the feel is more like a tent. The furniture, we have some folding furniture, we have some muddas, we have big fabric tents. So it's kind of more camping-ish, but again very refined. So we've gone to the extent of getting customized cast iron clamps that make the transition from a square pole to a round pole. The railings are all in bullies, casuarina poles, and we put wires, imagining that, and it's already started happening, is that the plants are slowly taking over. So the Shikaar Bagh would ultimately turn into a bagh itself with the greenery covering all over. So what we think is that this place will actually come to be in another year or 2 years when the greenery has covered the entire space, and that is when it will really become the thing that we've imagined it to be. Now the services were brought in a very interesting way. We have stables that run all the way in the back, and we took part of the stables and made them the kitchen. Now these stables we extended it to go to the first floor, and there's a bridge on the first floor level that connects the kitchen to the first floor level, which means the services can happen easily, and the toilets were inserted here again in the stables. So you access the toilets from the ground floor out here, and what is nice about this is that it separates the services from the guest areas, such that everything happens towards the rear, and the opening passage in the center allows light to come in into both. So the building looks like it's a standalone and the kitchen is somewhere else. It keeps the sound away. This passage in the center is also quite nice because it is used for cooking workshops, because the kitchen is right here and the restaurant is here. So it's a lovely little sunlit corridor out here.